death certificate, and we're gonna have to record the affidavit. And that goes for a trust as well. And all of the principals who will be signing have a photo ID. We're coming up against that a lot, that they don't have a California identification card or a driver's license, and that's huge. You can take a passport, but we've got to have one of those forms. So be prepared for that. Have any of the principals recently filed for bankruptcy? If they have, we are going to need an approval from the bankruptcy trustee to close the escrow. So that's a big deal as well. Are the sellers California residents? Because we may have to collect special taxes if they're not. Has there been a change in marital status of any vested owners, or will we be adding anyone to title? So if there's a divorce, we're going to have a spouse probably sign a spousal deed. If someone is deceased, again, we're going to have the death certificate. Is the property currently vested in a trust? Normally we can have a trust certification signed. If there has been a successor trustee taking over because of a death, we're going to need the full trust. Jean thought that maybe there were going to be some trust questions.
A lot of my listings are coming through right now with trust account, and I'm always having an agent come to me and mine just goes up to ask the title company. But when you write a contract and in the trustee's name, how do you write the contract? Was their name
as trustee or successor trustee for the name of the trust? So you really want to find out the name of the trust, see a copy of it if they've got it available, and ask them for it right off the bat, because a lot of people say, oh, I don't know where it is, but we have to have it. So
that's very, very important, because I'm seeing more and more, not only our own, but other listings coming through with the trust. And when you present your offer and things, you might want to chit chat with the other agent and see, or have the title company ask them if you don't want to ask them. But that's something they need up front.
yeah, so be as organized as you can when you're sitting down with your listing or signing the contract. Ask your people for any of these items, like if they're deceased, or if you know that they're divorced and they're paying child support, you're going to have to address that issue as well too, because child support's always going to be an issue, especially for a seller. There's going to be a child support lien probably that we're going to have to address. Let's see.
Wait, I want to go back to that for just a second. So let's give a quick example of what that would look like. So Jean Bain has a trust called the $1 Million Baby Trust, and I'm her son, and I'm the successor now. She is perfectly capable of signing for that house, even though it's in a trust. Who signs? She does. So if she's selling her house and it's in the $1 Million Baby Trust,
Yeah.
she signs it.
Yes, if she's capable of signing, by all means,
So
she would sign it.
So the listing goes in $1 Million Baby Trust
Yes.
/ Jean Bain.
No, it'd be Jean Bain as trustee to the $1 Million Baby Trust.
Okay.
And then you always have to have the date of the trust on the deed.
Okay. And now let's say she's a little cuckoo, and I'm the successor of that trust.
Okay.
Now what happens?
We're going to want to see the full copy of the trust to prove that you are a successor
Okay.
to the trust, and then you would sign it.
And the same thing, Dave Kineski.
As successor trustee too. Yeah.
That's what I need to know.
Dave, if you think of it as power of attorney, when you're signing that, Dave Kineski, so his name as Dave Kineski, his attorney, in fact, that almost is the same on your contract.
Thank you.
When they're not deceased, I know when they're deceased, you do an affidavit.
Yeah, the trustee.
That's a trustee, but in this example, if she was just kind of
Out of it.
out of it, is there still have to be some sort of affidavit filed saying that he's a successor?
Well, there would be probably an addendum to the trust, amendment to the trust, so that's why we need to see the full trust and any amendments. And if you're named as successor trustee in the original trust, then we're good.
Okay. Cool.
And sometimes it's difficult to ask for a death certificate. Don't make it difficult. I'll give you everything, sweetheart, I don't want a penny. Go to the title and get that quickly off, because 2 weeks later, she's found a boyfriend. I'm not signing that damn thing. How they change. You get it in the beginning, not at the end. And then you started off with getting off together, because I've seen it happen lots and lots and lots of times. And not always the woman that changes, sometimes it's the man. You know, they talk to a friend talk to a friend, they get their turn, you got nuts, but get in the beginning. If you don't, it is going to be so wonderful. Once you start in the beginning, makes your transaction go so much smoother. Have it in there, like the power of attorney. I got a guy that goes back to the, and flies out every other week to send to Missouri. I'm gonna say, you know what, just in case we need it, power of attorney is just for this property only, because she's thinking, oh my God, she gets in my car and everything else when I'm gone. But get that up front if they travel. It's so easy.
Yeah, I can prepare that in a minute, so,
Or two.
yeah, yeah. And if there is a deceased person, I need a certified copy of the death certificate. So some people think that I was recently given one that looked like a certified copy. It was blue and it was not embossed. A certified death certificate is embossed. So pay attention to that, because you can get fooled sometimes. We had to scrounge one up. You all are probably pretty familiar with short sales. Let's see, will there be a new entity formed, like a partnership or a corporation? So if so, we're gonna need all of the partnership or corporate docs. For corporation, we're gonna need a resolution. And we really ask for those up front, because we're gonna present those to title for approval immediately. Make sure that they're a corporation in good standing. Will all of the principals be available to sign the documents, or are any of them out of state? I can't believe how often it happens that I'm getting ready to have papers signed, and I'm informed that somebody's out of state, and that really causes a delay. So we need to know, like if the seller's out of state, I can get that package out to them earlier. Does the seller or buyer have any state or federal tax liens? That's huge. So, short sales, they still have to be paid. We can get a release of the lien a lot of times against the property, but they still stay against the party's name, and it'll be an unsecured lien then against their name. Is the seller or buyer subject to spousal or child support payments? For a buyer, that's huge, because that can affect their mortgage payments. And the lender will normally know about that, but the seller too. If there's any child support liens, they have to be paid current. So those are kind of our red flags to an escrow. The next sheet is tax liens and short sales. This is a website, there you go, where you can email the IRS if you have to deal with any tax liens. And then if you scroll up, it's just our annual tax calendar. You all know that our tax year starts July 1st. It's not a regular fiscal year, it's not January through December. So, and this shows you what time of year the penalties accrue, when the first and second installments are due. So, let's see, and then who pays what?
That's always a good sheet to have on hand in your
Yeah.
listing files.
And,
Yeah, you used to have one for different counties. You guys don't have that
and
one?
the next one is for the different counties.
Gee, Lisa. Dollar G.
And these are all handouts that we can provide all of you for your customers, for your buyers and your sellers. And then common forms of taking title. And you know that we can't advise people of how to take title. You know, they gotta consult their accountant. So that's all that I had for today. Does anybody have any questions?
We get a lot of the, information that comes over to us that the buyer or the seller has to fill out prior to the close of escrow.
Yeah.
How important, I know that sometimes this question comes up, how to explain it to the client, that statement of information.
that's really important because, first of all, if we have any SI hits, then we're gonna have to have their, say there's maybe a child support lien. We're gonna need social security numbers, we're gonna need, years of birth of the children, you know. All that information helps us pin down and eliminate things, so it's really crucial.
Okay, so I
Especially-
see how important it is on the seller side, but how
Yeah.
important it is on the buyer side as well.
The buyer side, we're not that concerned with,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, because the lender is going to normally make the requirements as to if the buyer has a child support lien, the lender's gonna be dealing with all of that off of the credit report and qualifying them for the loan, so.
I just had a client that had this and kind of resented it, very personal person. And I finally was, after a phone call, I stopped emailing, I was explaining to her that, her brother has a name that somebody else has. And we wanted to make sure she was getting it through a title. But I agree with people, they ask you for your social security number, just expect you to type it up and send it. I wouldn't, and she didn't, until that was explained to her.
Yeah,
You know, how many times there's Smiths out there, and you have the right Smith, and you wanna make sure that the social security number and that sort of title company can check it out and giving her a clear title. Not letting it close with somebody with the same name, puts a lien against for $50,000. I used 100 to scare her more. And so all she's doing is fill it out, send it to the title company, I don't even want it. Send it to the title company so they can do a statement of identification. So sometimes the seller resents that if they're very personal, they don't want people to know their information. You can explain that by saying, that somewhere along the line, somebody's popped up with maybe owing something that has your name.
Yeah.
The title company needs to research that. That's their job, it's called title insurance. That's how I got around it.
and similar names, that's why we need middle names, and if you're a junior or whatever, because that can help us eliminate things as well.
I
Also-
think it's important, I'm sorry, one more thing. I think it's important to know, if I write a contract with Jean L. Bain, then I have to sign everything, Jean L. Bain. If I write a contract with Jean Bain, and I happen to sign it Jean L. Bain, it's okay. It's when I sign it that we leave the middle initial out. So I got to the habit, I didn't even ask my people for the middle initial, because they would forget that I have to go back, and I took the easy route. So whenever you write that down, that first line is how they have to sign the final documents.
And you can oversign, you can never undersign.
Right. I agree with that 100%. So let's go around the room. Somebody, Mark had a good question. I don't know if
I know,
It was Dave.
came up.
The thing that I found interesting, especially with credit reports, this is just FYI, is a lot of it really depends on where you live. So even if you don't give me your social security number, but if you give me your name and where you've lived, I can pull a credit report on you. Isn't that a little weird? So just be aware of that. A lot of it is so important of your addresses where you've lived. So when you're filling out those SIs, make sure that you put all the addresses you live, because that will be very important.
At least the last three.
Yeah, I go down to
Unless
3. I don't
you
go beyond
move
that
on.
because sometimes they're in the service about 100 people. But at least a good 3, that's very good. I think with Jody, our problem as a broker here in the office, and I get it every day of my life, is I'll open an escrow with Lisa. She's an escrow coordinator. Lisa gets busy, but she's good, and she'll give it to Debbie. Debbie will get busy and give it to Pam, and Pammy gets busy and gives it to Linda, right? My broker demand goes to Lisa. You'd be amazed how many calls I get from that one and that one and that one. In fact, they don't talk to each other. We're looking for a coordinator. When I open an escrow with Jody, I don't care if you give it to 50,000 people, as long as you're the one that I open it up with, are you gonna audit that file for me?
Yes. I'll work the file all the way through. I take my phone calls. I feel like I stay on top of it more by taking my phone calls and doing a lot of the work myself. Of course, I have an assistant, but, you know, I work
Assistant
all
answers to
day.
you, not to us.
Right. And I always take my phone calls. I think it's crucial that an escrow officer answers their own.
Well, I think what happens is we open an escrow with Lisa, and this strange person is asking me for information that I've already sent. It's like, don't you communicate? I understand. I get busy. find myself with people smarter than I am. I mean, we look smarter. But in the end, I check it out. It's your responsibility to check that out,
And it is.
not for us to check whoever you're giving it to.
And I think I can say one thing, having dealt with all the short sales over the last, the bank-owned properties over the last 7 years, I perfected things to be as efficient as possible. You have to be.
You have to,
So-
if you don't know what you're, we're only as strong as the title company, escrow officer, in my opinion. We don't have questions, agents don't have questions. For the reason it's easier to call and do it than. So I think that's what we're looking at first. Does everybody agree with that?
Absolutely.
Who's your assistant?
My assistant Sally has not come over with me yet, but, we're planning on bringing her over in a couple of months. But right now, I'm smooth
That's it.
sailing,
Okay.
yeah.
In other words, you're a happy mark, you're gonna call Sally.
But also, call Carol's, and she knows how to find me. You know, if I'm
Can I get one of your
out
cards?
doing a signing, if I'm out doing a signing or something out of the office, which I do, people know how to reach me.
I think a title officer has the worst job there is, the worst, especially in today's market. First thing I would do is quit, because you have to represent both principals, you get so much garbage in. I cannot believe I've had an agent here for years that said, I go to all inspections, but I never attend a sign off. You had it asked backwards. Because you're there to look, now, we're closing one, I'm looking at the hood. I already found one mistake on something close to the document, that I can call the title company and correct it before it gets to the client. But I can't even imagine not taking the full credit, you know. I was signing my clients off one time and the escrow officer said, if you have any questions, please call me. And I said, what for? Why would they call you? Why wouldn't they call me? I'm the agent. If they got a question about the title, I will call the title company. So you bake the cake. Maybe you might as well serve it and let them eat it right there in front of you, because that's where the repeat and referral business comes in. They remember the last person that they talked to that cared about them. They're gonna think this one for me. Naturally, we all think them. But the end is, are you there for your sign-offs? And I don't know where you are, you better be there, because that's so very, very, and it helps you.
Yeah, I do my own signings. Of course, if somebody wants to sign in Fremont at 8 o'clock, you know, I'll have a signer do that. And I only use a signer that is a qualified escrow officer. But I do all my own signings.
Good, good. We should be there, make sure we do all the good signing. Yeah. So having an assistant, nothing wrong with that, as long as you know what the assistant's doing. And I think there's a person in here that hasn't expressed that with me. God, I don't know who to talk to. Well, we don't, you know, and that's what we welcome you back to Tracy. But some, a new agent should have questions. Alina, do you have any questions at all?
Not yet.
Not
I
yet.
want a
Okay.
copy of those cards though.
Yeah, well, we all have one. Michelle?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, and Joe, you stress that, really important to be preventive as an agent for us to already have all the information and try to do your homework, because, otherwise, the delays you don't like.
Yeah, and it makes you shine too.
Right.
I mean, just listen to what they're talking about. If you hear the word trust, we're probably gonna need to see a copy of the trust. You know, if somebody's passed away, find that out, you know?
And I think as a buyer in the beginning, if you start shopping for homes, they ought to start shopping for insurance. I've seen down at the bottom, who's your insurance? Well, I don't have one yet. You're closing, for God's sake, 2 days before you close. So that's information you plant into the buyer. See your lender and start shopping for, what price home. You can fill in all the information. Our sheets we are going to continue to use have an approximate on it, estimate. So at least have an idea and get them started on their insurance policy. Guess what it does? Miguel, I'm selling you a house and I want you to please start shopping for your insurance. It's imperative that you have it by the time we close it. He's more committed to me, and chances of him running down the street and finding another agent is nil. started asking, giving me things that I've asked for. So that ties you closer to your client, which you're wise. Home warranties. I don't know what the big deal is, we gotta wait the day after it closes before we order home warranties. And disclosures, you know, we don't pay for them if they don't go through. All these things you could have set up once you become your own escrow coordinator and you get all this information up front. Ernie Byrne, any questions at all?
No.
Usually a pretty good one. Who's next to you? I can't see.
Hi.
No questions?
No questions at all. Then don't remember that when you come and ask me about a title question, because.
I'll go to
You
her.
had your chance.
Yeah.
Too late.
Yeah. Rhonda,
They'll come up, the questions will come as we go, and they're usually pretty new, but the ones that are in the past that have always created the issues have been the HOAs, you know, and the trust, they're out of the country, you know, and
if I ever go to that.
child support and the wives and all the kind of, you know, quit claim deeds, you know, so it is best to handle everything up front, all those questions. Those sheets are very important, you know, stuff, so because they prod your mind to remember, you know,
If I ever
what
go to
questions to
that
ask.
one, I got reservation there for the cuckoo house. It'll be over the homeowner not being passed back and forth 17 days.
Yes.
That'll be the one that'll get me. That one right there. So you know all this up front.
Yep.
And if you read the bottom, they have to have 3 days to read that to change their mind. Some of them just signed it up, and never even seen it before. So that's what we have to let people know.
Oh, Jody, I do have a question. I know that in the past, when we were dealing a lot with Mountain House, it started to come up that there was les pendants, and those les pendants were credit card debt, which would seem kind of odd, but during the period of time when they're doing all the short sales, all of that started to be thrown onto the, onto the mortgage. You know, so you see that
For
still
buyer or
happening a
for
lot?
seller?
For the seller, you know?
I have not seen that.
I-
If you
there
have
was
a
a-
Liz pendants,
Yes.
that's gonna hold up the works.
Yes.
Because you've got to get it. for-
$17,000 credit card. It was really strange.
I haven't seen
The only thing
anything
I
like
saw at Mountain House was water bills.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. They're $70,000 water bills. And homeowners association. And not, no, incredible. Which, if you read the priest,
Make sure you read your brief.
when you get the priest, first thing you do is read them, duh.
Yeah.
You know, and all that's in there so you can deal with it, not impose a title. So, it's tough out there. That needs to have attorneys that handle all this. We basically take the responsibility for seeing if this is done, and why isn't it being done? So, make us look fantastic, so much easier to go worry about life is tough, life's a pits out there, so. I said life is good, it's just agents that are really kind of, I said stupid, that's a good word, stupid. But because they haven't had the training that we get in our office, and I thank God every day that we do have these Tuesdays meetings. Graciela,
No questions.
Iman,
During signings, you guys always ask for ID. So what I've been doing is, if somebody wants to make an offer, I'll ask him for an ID and basically ask him, is that how you want a title? Because then when you go to sign it, it's exactly the same.
Perfect.
Everything matches.
That's a good
something
idea.
is-
very good,
Very good
excellent,
idea.
excellent. Just don't ask for those social security numbers. Very good, Iman, very good. Iman. Linda,
No.
are you sure?
If I have some, I will call you.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes your question helps us, because we don't know the answers either. It brings it to our mind. What is your question? So keep us in the loop too. David, I think you've asked one.
I asked mine already.
Good questions, yeah. Frank,
No, none left.
escrow, I have one. People work. They close their escrow on Wednesday. When can they expect a check here in the office? The following Monday?
Oh, gosh, no, we get your, we know that you haven't done all of this just to get your check a week later. We get it to you same day. Yeah.
And if it, at the top of our demand says if there is any mistakes, my addition says that the computer isn't what it's supposed to be. I was at nickel off, and it helped to close it up 4 days for a nickel. I would have given them $1 for to close it. But the moral of the story is, there is a question on the demand. I like to be called, emails, I can fix it. You email Lisa, she can't fix it. and she's gotta give it to me, and I gotta give it, you know, just email me, I'll fix it. You know, I make a couple of mistakes a year, but, so usually, if it's in my favor, I don't correct it. I was gonna tell you up front. Okay. Pam?
No questions.
Good. David M.
I've always enjoyed working with you.
Oh, you're so sweet, thank you, same here,
Mark?
No question, one from that.
thank you,
Lisa? You did an excellent job there.
thanks.
Okay. This will be put on the main page, weird flags, so you can pick it up on your computer. Okay? And thank that person standing back there for, you know what I love about her? In and out. Kind of come, she said, I spent 4 hours at Coldwell Banker. Yeah, you wasted 3.5 hours of my agent's time. You know, get in, give us our money, and go out.
Get that from now.
That's right.
And two weeks to cut that out, and the reason why.
Thank you, Jody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys, we appreciate you and having Jody, we really do.
Dave's gonna go over a couple of things with us. This is, something that we wanna go over in the beginning, because we have a say-so, we have a voice in this. There's a couple of things on our contracts that are coming in November that we can change. It's like, well, you know, all this criticism, earn the right to criticize people. And if you go to the meeting and you ask for things to be done, and they're still not done, it's because nobody wants to do what you say. But at least Dave's gonna share with us.
Good day.
It's early, and there's a special meeting, you should attend. If you don't attend and you don't like the way the contract's written, shut up. Because we should attend these meetings when they're important. So we're early to get some ideas, and Dave's gonna say, you should go over this real fast, but you need to read it. He's not gonna read every word to you.
So- So first of all, we're gonna talk about, it's been a long time since contracts have been this examined, this changed, this gone through with a fine-tooth comb. So who draws our contracts? It's the California Association of Realtors. We've always been using the same contract with little changes here and there. This time they went through it word for word in the committee. And unfortunately, it's not my committee, but we're here to look at it anyway. These are the contracts that we use every day. We need to take this seriously. Every single one of you got an email with this in it. If you have not opened it, if you have not reviewed it, if you have not gone through it, we need to do that. Each individual person. And I want you to know that it's, we really want your input. So what's going to happen is this is going to go into effect in November 14th, but it's going to be voted on the floor in July in Sacramento. June. So even though this says November, the committee's already gone through this. The committee's made recommendations. These are the recommendations. So all the red is going to be stricken. All the blue is going to be added. And let's start off at the very beginning, and just as an example, when you look at a contract, what's the contract date? Is the date, remember we used to have the date up here on the left, on the right? Is that the date of the contract? No, it's the date that the contract is signed. So that's why that's redded out. It's stricken out. Because this date is just the date that the contract, that's just the date you sat at your computer and put in the date. And that's why it says for reference only. And it's good for your client to know that as well, right? So what we try to strive for in our contracts is that it is supposed to be, it's not a contract that's written in legalese. It's a contract that your clients are supposed to understand. But guess what? If you don't understand it, they're never going to understand it. So it's very important that we go through this. We're not going to go through the entire contract today, but let's just take the first page for instance. So some little tiny changes, like the address is going to be not described as, but it is the address. So first big change is we've had this issue throughout the years of I'm writing on my property, you're writing on my property, and you're writing on my property, and then there's people in other offices that are writing on my property. How do we make sure that the buyers are aware of that? So we've put it in a paragraph. That was a lot of wording to just say potentially competing buyers and sellers. So we've taken that and we've dropped it to that. Simple, sometimes words get in the way. You're just trying to say all this stuff when really what you want to say is that. So that's the first change. The other thing is that we've had legal size contracts, we've had 14-page contracts, we've had 7-page contracts, and when you and I first got in the business, there were 1 page, and when I finally got my feet wet, there were 2 pages. But that was a million years ago. Because we don't have attorneys that do this, this is the attorney's legal aid. So, I'm going to ask Mark to explain the little boxes and the circles, because this is a big change. Mark, can you just tell us what those
What
boxes
they're gonna do is they're gonna put in, they're called radio buttons. And instead of boxes, whenever you see a circle like that, that means that it's mutually exclusive, meaning it's gonna be one or the other. Or you can pick it. If you see a box, those are multiple choice. You can have 2 boxes checked, you can have 1 box checked, you can leave it blank. But on the radio buttons, when you come to section 2, agency, and you see radio buttons, you gotta choose one of those. Like under 2B, you need to choose one when you see radio buttons.
This is the biggest problem coming into our office, right there, number B. So I'm glad you've addressed that. Now, one of the things I'm having is, they're filling out this big page confirmation. You don't have to fill that page out anymore. The only time you fill it out is if it's left blank and the other agent has it. You can't fill it in or do an addendum, you gotta go back to the long page of confirmation.
Right.
Otherwise, sometimes, if I bring in an offer in, I'm the selling agent and I leave the listing agent blank. That's where the biggest problem, then I have to go back to the old form. So I'm glad, one of those has to be filled out.
And so the way they describe the changes, they're gonna take advantage of the fact that you're on a computer, and the computer's gonna make you pick one.
Good.
One will be checked, and you have to change it if you want it to be the other. When you see in the draft here, section D, number 2, see how it has a little check next to it? That's telling us that that's gonna be the default when you pull it up on the new form. The little check mark means that that's the default.
Yeah, I can't see that far from here, but if you're representing both buyers and sellers, do you need the confirmation separately?
Let's talk about that for a minute. The listing agent, they're asking the 2 questions. Who's the listing agent and who's the selling agent? Has 2 answers.
But when you say
The listing agent, you're representing both. Selling agent, representing both. Answer both questions. There's 2
but is there a
questions.
section here, like I said, I can't see that far. but you-
That's what that says. That's like we have in the current contract. It's just, they left it alone, because it's black. That's what it was before. They're just showing you in blue that they're gonna change this, the way you choose which is which. Seller exclusively, buyer exclusively. That was in our contract before.
Wait, there's no one that says both here on
It
this
does say
page.
both.
It is,
It
right
does
there.
say
Thank you, that's
both.
all I'm seeing.
Well,
Okay, thanks.
the change is that you're gonna have to choose one now.
Okay.
Before, you didn't have, you could've left the whole thing blank, it wouldn't matter. Well, because the way Zip Forms is gonna work, it's gonna make you pick one.
Wonderful.
So,
So you can't forget it by
Right.
accident.
And if you bring a contract in and they've forgotten it or don't do it, then you have to get that old-fashioned confirmation.
You can't forget it.
All right, so when you're looking at it, the orange ones are gonna be added, right? Those are gonna be added in blue, but those are good, those are,
the
no, those are
example
old.
doesn't, the explanation doesn't explain why some are orange, some are pink, some are green, some are blue.
out the,
And so,
I'm green.
it doesn't say why, yeah, there's some green. I'm assuming that means they're new. If they're blue, they're replacing a box. And I don't know what pink and orange meant. I don't quite understand it. But maybe it wasn't a choice before, but now you need to choose.
To me, I think the red is indicating that it is going to be changed, and that's what the blue is saying, what's going to be changed to. I haven't seen any green.
No, I'm talking about those radio buttons, just the
Oh.
radio buttons, the round
okay,
circles.
Okay.
They're different colors, and it doesn't tell you in the explanation letter why they're different colors.
Well, it'd be a wonderful question for the meeting to ask.
Right, and we will. So the next big change is we used to have a PAA, and remember what that is? It's got the 4 different things on it, who's gonna stay in the property, what are we doing with the deposit, all of that. That's been all broken out now, that page is going away, and so now we're gonna have an AFA, which I believe is.
Assumed financing, and then
Yes, so financing shouldn't have been on a form with all that other stuff. So if you're gonna do assume financing, and that may be coming, kids.
It will be.
It may
will
be coming.
It will be.
So if, we're gonna have to have a separate meeting on that, because when you're doing seller financing, it's not just check the box and run. There's gonna be
So
some
on the
things that you have
VA
to
is where we're
discuss.
going to see it a lot too, so we'll have a special class on that.
All right, so let's go back to the deposit, because I know that Mama Jean was really concerned with this. So, okay, so here's your initial deposit. Over on the right-hand side, you're gonna put in, it's $2,500 or whatever the amount is. And then, remember before we had electronic availability of just putting the buyer's money into title, which a lot of agents do, we don't do that necessarily
Well,
here.
a lot of
because there's no-
agents don't do it.
Exactly, because then how do you know if anything happened,
You
right?
don't.
So what I think what Gene wants to do is,
Right there where you hand straight.
right here. So when we're talking about the deposit, what used to happen is we'd get a copy of the check and we'd give it in. Or if it was your buyer, you'd give her the check. Now, is she cashing that check? No. She's holding that check. So let's talk about that just real quick for a second. If we had a broker's trust fund, which is different than a trust log, trust fund would be they write the check to Caldwell Banker or Gene Bain Enterprises or whatever the name is, she would cash it. And then when it's time to take that money, then she would release it. We don't do that. We do a trust fund log, which is different. And I don't know anybody that does a trust fund anymore, but a trust fund log just means that we're gonna show the checking coming in and show the check going back out to the title company. So that's the way that you want it. So unless it's, so,
That's not my problem, that's wonderful.
Great.
I explain as you're the seller, and I'm gonna write on there.
right, so if you get a contract in from a buyer, I'm the listing agent, I get a contract in that says, oh, well, we didn't give you a check because we're gonna do an automatic deposit.
Wire
What is your response to that? What do we do then?
My response is that they said, now, we're getting contracts in that the agents are telling they don't need a deposit. So I'm saying to you as a broker, you don't have a contract without a deposit.
Without a deposit,
I can give you a copy. But I don't know if they put I don't know.
where that
Can
deposit
you,
ever
the
went.
seller,
Show.
did they put that in there? I'm told, oh, don't worry about it, they'll get it there. I worry about it. You worried about it last week.
Exactly, I lost the contract because
wanna
there
know
was never a
where-
deposit.
Never deposit. So how can I, as a selling agent,
Counter
as
that.
as a listing agent, and you're bringing the offer in, how can I counter that back to make sure you put that in the deposit, not being cashed in the title company within 3 days?
Okay,
So,
already,
Can I just interject?
yes,
So what the change to the contract was, we had all these different little boxes to choose different examples and stuff. Right now, if you notice, all the little boxes are gone. There's two choices. A, one, buyer direct deposited, or two, buyer's deposit with broker. There's no other choices. And it's gonna make you pick one of those two circles.
As a buyer, I'm the listing agent again, you're bringing me a contract,
Right.
you're gonna pick one of those two.
My contract's gonna say that I did,
Yeah.
but my buyer is doing this.
and then added was, at the bottom of both of those paragraphs, it doesn't matter, deposits held and released shall be recorded in the broker's trust fund log, which goes into her in basket. Deposits received by broker shall be an actual check, not a copy. So I love that, that's a great change.
There were so many frickin' boxes you had to
Right, now it's all
unsign.
cleaned
And now
up.
it's gonna make, as I'm writing the contract in zip forms, it's gonna make me pick one or two.
I love it,
But-
thank you guys, I love it.
But if you do the automatic transfer, do we do proof of funds? Do you
So
also
that's a
do
good
proof of
question, and it's up to the broker. So if you're getting an offer coming in, and it says, oh, we're just gonna do automatic, then I would say,
I'm going to check with the title company and have them send me a copy of it.
the second they get it, I want a receipt for that deposit, and that's going to satisfy your sheet.
Exactly right.
Perfect.
And the agent that's taking the offer, because it's just saying, I love it. We're writing an offer, you don't need a deposit check, I think that it's accepted. We know the deposit check has to be dated exactly the same as a contract.
So, right, so and if you look at example A1, the buyer is gonna direct deposit with escrow. The choice electronic over on the far right, that's automatically checked, that's gonna be the default radio button. If you're gonna use a money order or a cashier's check, you have to change it over here and turn off electronic and put money order or cashier's check. Do other and put cashier's check,
And
or
I
however
have
they're
no
gonna
problem
deposit.
picking up the title company saying, hey there, Jody, be sure and notify me and send me an email on
A
the
receipt for deposit.
receipt for deposit. Receipt for deposit. If you don't do that, then you're not servicing the buyer and the seller. Thank God for that.
right, scroll up a little bit, let's see what else is on
Who has
the
that
page.
Volkswagen outside? There's a truck that needs to get by for the tree trimmers, and they
We'll
can't
tell
go.
you what's
Yours? Okay, that's what it looked like your.
And let me share something with you that it says, and I think this is
I've
I'm
been trying to get through.
writing a contract, and I'm making a deposit of $10,000. I need to transfer funds from one bank to another. If I state that in my contract, I'm okay.
You don't.
If I don't state it, then it better be in there. But I can write in there, money being transferred will be in by date.
Otherwise, it's not a contingency and you just bought the house.
That's exactly
Okay,
right.
so here's an example of either or. So it's either gonna be all cash, you're gonna check that button, or the little check means that it's automatic, most contracts are gonna come in with a loan. So if you know that it's a loan, then that's automatically gonna be your default, otherwise you're gonna change it to that.
I love it.
The first loan, the second loan, it's all spelled out. Again, there was a change on that form there. FHA, VA, same as it was before. I like that because,
Buyer has, hold on, buyer has 17 days after reception to deliver service notice of their buyer.
okay. So, which,
Where's that within 17?
Which one are you looking
days,
at?
huh?
conventional financing, or FHA or VA, or seller financing.
Okay,
which-
so the part I'm thinking of that we wanna look at, there's a big change, is when we get to, contingency removal.
Correct,
So that's down below.
correct. So let's keep going through that real quick. All right, additional down payment, balance of down, verification of down payment, none of that's changed. Okay, so here, loan applications, let's see, if any loan specified is in 3D is an adjustable rate, so, in the olden days, you used to qualify off the start rate. Now it says you're gonna be qualifying off the qualifying rate, not the initial loan rate. So remember those loans that started out at 2.5 and jumped to 7? You have to qualify for the 7. I think that's putting it in line with the QM, which is that qualified mortgage that were spoken to by our mortgage friends. So beware of that. Okay, loan contingencies. So if there's, let's see, buyer,
The big change is item number 3.
yeah, that's right here.
Mhm.
Okay, so within 25 days, instead of 17.
Within, don't check that out, but in, it's within. That's the biggest thing, people take that within, and I see it. Today I'm out of a contract, if I wrote 10 days, it's now 17 days. What the hell are you changing it for?
So here's the problem. Here was the problem. Everything, back in the day, you had 2 weeks to do this, 10 days to do that, 3 days to do that, and 20 days to do this. Then, as an industry, we said 17 days. That's the or get off the pot date.
Within.
Right. So 17 days. But what was happening was 17 days really a long enough time to get your loan approval? Of course not. So everybody was hanging from the 17th day till about the 25th. So now we're calling that out. We're saying 17 days, get all your inspections. After your inspections are done, you want to buy this house, you still have till the 25th day to get your loan in. That's a big change. We were all doing it anyway.
Needed
We were
somewhere.
all doing it anyway. So now it breaks that out.
I'm gonna suggest something. If somebody writes on your listing, and they're the old-fashioned guy that worked one escrow a year, and changes that within 10 days, counter it back within 25 days, because I can guarantee you, he's gonna be out of contract and go, "Why?" Just counter it back to 20. You need 25 days, because you're not counting the weekends. When you're trying to do something in 10 days, there's 4 weekends, that gives you 6 days. Physically impossible to read everything. So counter them back, they have 25 days. I would counter out 10 days every time. Now you go with the extensions, and the extensions, and the extensions. You could have avoided that by doing the 25 days.
Okay, this one's gonna be a hot button for Gene also, the buyer credits. So first of all, we don't like calling them buyer credits, and it's now called a contractual credit, which is essentially the same thing as having a buyer credit. But essentially, it's saying that, so you've decided that your buyer's gonna get $10,000 in their escrow to cover the closing costs. But now the lender comes back and says, no, you're only allowed 3%. So it can't be 10,000, now it can only be 9,000. So it's addressing that right here. The total credit allowed by buyer's lender is less than the contractual credit differential, then the contractual credit shall be reduced to that allowed. Okay, so we're going from 10,000 to 9,000, let's say on a $100,000 escrow. Buyer's lender, and there shall be no adjustment to the purchase price to make up the credit differential. So this is a line that Gene has always stressed in our contracts, because we'll write, oh, we have this credit, oh, we can't use that credit, what happens to that credit? There it is. It does
The seller
not
can't
get
claim it
reduced from
anymore.
the purchase price. So be aware of that. Okay, we've always had that in our contracts because we've written it in.
And you're going to get
Now
more and more
everybody
buyers paying closing costs now and doing different things, believe it or not.
Correct, it's gonna be very competitive.
I'm talking about the appraisal, all that business.
Appraisal contingency removal, so remember there used to be that box that used to say, oh, we're gonna leave the loan contingency all the way to the end of escrow.
Yeah,
That went away too.
good.
So
Just back up on there, just up a little bit, see that, the loan contingency shall
no
remain
loan
effective and-
contingency,
the red line above, at the very, very top. That
loan
line goes
contingency
away.
shall remain, that goes away, goodbye.
Love
So,
it, love it, love it.
And then they added a statement in item number 3, if you scroll back up just a little bit. It says, if you remove the loan contingency, you're removing the appraisal contingency.
right there, because they go hand in
They're
hand.
tied together.
25
I don't know why they were separated before anyway, it didn't
Which
make any
should have
sense.
been.
But they left the appraisal, they left a separate appraisal contingency box in case I don't have a loan, but I still wanna get an appraisal. I can still have
You
an
can buy it
appraisal
all cash,
contingency.
but you
Yeah.
still wanted to appraise,
Exactly,
it can be done. Okay.
perfect.
So that's then 25 days also?
No, 17, they left it 17.
Because that's just a regular
Okay.
contingency,
Yeah.
and wouldn't have anything to do with it. Okay, so this one was interesting too. So, I'm gonna write that I'm going to do, 5% down conventional. But what I'm really gonna do is 3% down FHA. You can do that, but the seller has no obligation to cooperate with buyer in their efforts to obtain alternate financing. So whatever it was that you stated in your contract, you're glued to that. You're glued to that.
Who's on floor?
So just be aware of that.
Actually,
Remember,
it's
if
going
you
up.
change financing,
Halfway through.
you had to notify them. They're saying you don't have to notify, but if there's any charges, like 1% or whatever, that doesn't
Or
apply.
what the big deal is, okay, now all of a sudden we have an FHA appraiser which said, no, that has to be fixed, that has to be fixed, and that has to be fixed, when conventional it didn't. So that could be a huge number. Okay, allocation of costs,
It's gone.
oh, we added certifications, so roof cert versus a roof clearance versus a roof inspection, that's fine.
Oh, Dave, I missed something. Like, if you change your financing, that's also way out of the summer, right? They don't have to accept that.
No, they don't have to cooperate. So the seller really doesn't have any contingencies, right? The seller's selling. As soon as they sign that listing, they're selling.
Yeah.
Buyer has lots of contingencies. What the seller can say is, I'm not going to pay for that FHA repairs.
Okay.
So if you call that a contingency, fine, but it's really just letting the buyer say, hey, we're not doing it.
Right.
Okay? So remember how we also used to call out, okay, so in the back in the old contracts, it was roof and termite. That's all we really cared about. And then we got into home inspections. We didn't have them out here in California. You guys brought them from Pleasanton, thank you very much. And so there was a while there that we really didn't have that in our contracts. So then we had termite kind of like boilerplated in there. Why? I don't even know, right? What was so important about a termite inspection versus a roof, versus a well, versus all this? So what they've done is they've taken those out, and they actually added elevation certification in there, which
Does that mean?
that doesn't have anything to do with us here. Well, yeah, maybe it does. I'm sorry. Yeah, if you're buying a property out on Lammers Road, past the mall,
Okay.
you're below sea level.
Yeah,
You're in flood
Bandit-
zone.
Bandit too, is a little, okay.
You're in flood zone, so that one could be an issue. Let's keep going to the next page.
One
all right.
more, okay.
Okay, so we're no longer calling them smoke detectors, we're calling them smoke alarms and carbon monoxide devices. Okay. Just a word
This
change
is kind
there.
of on my list too, that, appraiser told me yesterday that his biggest thing was having to go back to do carbon. So
sell a property, a rental property in Stockton, you have to have a inspection by the city saying that your property is in order. So we're also gonna call that out. Seller shall